How well do you really know nether portals? Are you a complete beginner just trying to figure them out, a typical player that knows enough to get by, or do you consider yourself a veteran of advanced linking? Well, here's the thing, unless you belong to that last group of nerds, I'm about to show how you likely have massive misconceptions about how portals actually work. This is not a farm video or a tutorial, this is a public service for everyone who has ever been frustrated when trying to get a portal to link. We'll be covering not the boring math in the Windows calculator, but what it means visually to switch between two dimensions. We will go through the actual portal search algorithm the game uses, how it is used to our advantage in hubs and common farms, and even how to break all the rules at the very border of the world itself. So join me and forget everything you think you know as we delve deep beneath the surface into nether portals. This video has two parts, and apparently some bossa nova. Part 1 is the basics, covering the core mechanics of how portals link. We'll start off by tearing down your preconceptions, then go through how coordinates work and the portal search algorithm. These sections are the most important for a good understanding of portals, so if nothing else, at least be sure to watch through these if you are trying to learn. Part 2 is about how to apply this knowledge in common farms and builds you encounter. We take what we learned in part 1 and use it to go through and understand Ian's gold farm and my FML gold farm as two practical examples, and then briefly touch on world border farms. And a quick reminder for all the people who can't read a pinned comment, this video is made for Java Edition mechanics only. So let's get right into it. To start out, I'd like to begin by maniacally tearing down and demolishing what you think you know about portals so that we can rebuild a better understanding afterward. So let's do some myth busting. Myth number 1, nether portals form a two-way link so that if you travel across dimensions, then turn around and go right back through the same portal, it will send you back to the same place. This is not always true. It is entirely possible to go back through a portal and end up in a third location, or even for one portal to send you to multiple destinations depending on where you are in the frame itself. Myth number 2, when you first enter a new portal, it will generate one in the other dimension in this exact spot if converted to the other dimension's coordinates. This is also false. Nether portals generate their counterparts in slightly different coordinates all the time, because the generation area has specific requirements. And lastly, we have the biggest myth of all, myth number 3. Dividing or multiplying the coordinates of a nether portal by 8 shows you the exact spot a portal will link to in the other dimension. And as wild as it is, this is also not true. It's close to being true, but not entirely. There are some key differences that you need to be aware of. So all this information may seem confusing at first, but don't worry, there is a method to the madness, and anyone can easily learn this if it is properly explained, which is what I'm doing my best to do here. Because the reality is, these mechanics will affect you at some point when you play Microsoft Block Simulator. And to understand more, we need to look at two foundational concepts, which are coordinates in both dimensions and the portal search algorithm itself. So coordinates themselves are pretty simple, and many players already pretty much know how this works, but it bears mentioning again here. If we press F3, we can see the exact coordinates where we are at here. Right now I'm using the better F3 mod, but if you want to see where they're at in vanilla, you can look at this photo right here, which will show you the exact location of both of these. So the XYZ coordinates display the exact location of the bottom center of the player's hitbox, and you can see your hitbox by pressing F3B. So the way these numbers work is that every line between blocks corresponds to a whole number on your coordinates. This means that standing in the exact center of a block means that you're at half a number. There's also a line for what is called the block coordinates. Block coordinates always round to the lower northwest corner of real blocks in the world, but it's pretty much always easier just to look at the F3 screen if you want to be sure of the location for some reason. Funny enough, the Y coordinate you see when standing on a full block corresponds to the block coordinate your legs occupy and not the one underneath you. So if we apply this to 3 separate dimensions, it means that the exact center of your world, 0, 0, 0, is actually a point, not any one block, but it corresponds to a block coordinate that is a block. Each coordinate number represents a separate axis. X and Z are the horizontal dimensions, and Y is the vertical dimension. East is in the direction of positive X counting upwards, west is negative X, south is positive Z, north is negative Z, and up is positive Y, and down is negative Y, as you probably know. There are also important differences between the nether coordinates and the overworld coordinates. Think of it as the nether is compressed by a factor of 8. To convert an overworld point to the nether, divide the X and Z distances each by 8, and keep the Y coordinate exactly the same. Most people people already know that in the Nether, space is compressed by a factor of 8, which makes distances traveled in the Nether 8 times greater than in the overworld, meaning that if you were to travel 10 blocks in the Nether, that's the equivalent of 80 blocks in the overworld. There's a really fun and old theory that shows that if Minecraft was a planet like Earth, the overworld is like the surface, but the Nether behaves like it's a layer deep down in the mantle or core, hence all the lava. Walking a short distance in the Nether corresponds to a larger distance above because of the curvature of the planet. This would be a really convincing theory if only Dinnerbone hadn't confirmed that it's false and that Mojang considers the Nether a complete separate dimension. Regardless, it can help you visualize what's going on as you walk a distance in the Nether compared to the overworld. Of course, nothing is curved in Minecraft unless you run the very cursed no cubes mod or apply world curvature in the deep annals of BSL shader settings, but this might be a useful way of thinking about how the distances relate, because in both Minecraft and in this model, this expansion doesn't apply to the Y dimension. The height scale remains exactly the same for both levels, with a very small exception we'll discuss later. A different and more accurate way to look at this difference is to examine an equivalent volume in both dimensions side by side. So let's use the volumes that Nether portals search through to find links for as an example. You'll see the overworld search area here in blue and the corresponding Nether equivalent volume in red. So this visualization shows you just how massive the dimensional warping actually is, because all the space in the overworld more or less gets compressed into that little tiny red space in the Nether. That's what makes it so fast to travel in the Nether compared to the overworld. It doesn't take very long to cover the 33 blocks in the middle here, and it would take a long time to cover all the outer range here in blue. So because this is such a huge difference in distance, the fact that we round to the nearest block coordinate after we travel across dimensions is extremely important. Because whether you round before or after the conversion by 8 really matters, because each block in the Nether is as big as an 8x8 space in the overworld. And just to visualize this, let me show you a neat carpet script that Gnembon made. So if you do script load overlay, and then you do overlay portal coordinates, you can actually see the 8x8 spaces that link directly to a certain block in the Nether. Because of the dimensional warping, this whole 8x8 area corresponds to only one block in the Nether, and you can see the coordinates of that block right above my head here. This mod actually visualizes the exact Nether block that all of these different spaces in the overworld are going to link to. You could be anywhere in this 8x8 space and it would still link to the exact same point. It's not exactly a one-for-one precise deal as long as you know where this dividing line is. And if we take into account this difference on the Nether side going into the overworld, it gets very crazy very fast, and that is where it's actually kind of more dangerous for linking up and links going wrong. So let's hop into the Nether real quick and we will see. And on the Nether side, each tiny position here corresponds to a whole block coordinate in the overworld. And you can see that whole 8x8 space in the overworld translates to this really tiny little area here, even just on one block. The reason being for all of these tiny different subdivisions on a block is not only because of the compression from the Nether to the overworld, but also because the actual portal search algorithm is taken based on the location of the entity traveling through the portal, which, as we've already discussed, is taken from the bottom center of the entity's hitbox. And so as you can see, the bottom center of my hitbox can be in a very different place than the center of this Nether portal as I go through. So that means that there's a space like from the middle of this block to the middle of the block on the other side, which is almost like a 16 block gap based on like where you can start a portal search from the same portal. With this in mind, let's go through the thing that causes the most issues for people, which is just the whole portal search algorithm itself, and this will hopefully clarify a lot of what is going on here. But before we do that, I want to tell you about my dilemma. My channel has been growing a lot recently. This past year, I've gained about 30,000 subscribers. I've got a couple of my contraptions built on Hermitcraft somehow, and I just got nominated for the 2025 Redstone Awards, which is honestly unreal to me, and I'm extremely grateful for everything. But my dilemma is that I have no idea what to do with any sort of success. I mean, I'd really like to be able to do YouTube full-time eventually, which means more content for you all and a nice relaxing profession for me, but I also don't want to lose the people-focused nature of the channel by turning it into any sort of profit-hungry business like most people do. So for a more ethical way for people to support the channel and get something back in return, I've made some Minecraft merch that is, shockingly, not designed for 9-year-olds. There are some designs I made from scratch about how Minecraft chickens violate the laws of physics, a mug that shows how coffee increases your signal strength, and more. Everything is very ethically priced at only a 33 33% markup, which means a fair price of $20 for a t-shirt and $12 for a mug. At the time this video drops, the website won't quite be up yet, as I'm waiting to confirm that the samples I'm getting print out okay, but by the time many of you see this video, it will be linked in the description and the pinned comment. Feel free to check it out if you're interested in supporting the channel and getting something cool at the same time. Plug over, let's get back to the video. The portal search algorithm is the process the game uses to both create new portals and determine which portal entities will go to. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick overview of everything in this process and then explain it step by step in more detail. And a quick note, this algorithm has mostly been the same since around 1.16 or so, but there is one small detail that was added in 1.21.2, and I'll let you know when we get there. In a nutshell, what this algorithm does is very simple. It converts the position of the entity traveling through the portal, finds the closest portal in the new dimension to that converted position, and teleports whatever entity is traveling to that portal. And if it can't find a portal within the 3-dimensional search range, it attempts to generate one and teleports the entity there. It's very important to note that this is a one-time and one-way process for every entity that travels. There is no data that gets saved between any two portals anymore. There is no actual linking that occurs. If another portal is built in the target dimension that is closer to the converted coordinates, then all the traffic will be routed to that new portal instead. So here are the steps the algorithm goes through in order. Number 1, an entity collides with another portal block, and the game records the entity's precise coordinates in that dimension. If it's the player, this happens after a few seconds, unless they are riding in an object or on a mob, in which case it is instant. That was a more recent change in some early 1.21 version. And if it's a non-player entity, such as a mob or a block, it also happens instantly. Step 2, the game converts those coordinates into the destination coordinates and then rounds them to the nearest block coordinate. That order is very important because of the dimensional warping that we talked about earlier. Step 3, the game searches a 3-dimensional search range in the target dimension centered on the converted block coordinate for the closest target portal block. Step 4, if the game finds a portal block in this area, it then determines the position and orientation of the entity in the target portal. And step 5, the entity is teleported to this location. However, if no portal was originally found in the search area, the game runs an algorithm to generate a new portal in the target dimension, and the game tries to find a suitable location in the search area that meets a specific criteria. If it finds one, it creates a portal there, and if it doesn't find any of these areas that meet the criteria, it forces another portal at the original block coordinate. After that, the same positioning and orientation algorithm is run for the new portal, and the entity is then transported to the new portal. Let's take a closer look at each step here. For steps 1 and 2, as we discussed before, the coordinates used for the entire process are the precise coordinates for each entity and not the portal frame itself. These coordinates are centered in the bottom middle of the entity's hitbox. Conversion is done by first dividing or multiplying each x and z coordinate by 8, keeping the y coordinate exactly the same, and then converting that precise result to the block position. Even at the bottom and the top of the world, where there are y levels in the overworld that you can't build at in the Nether anymore because of the Caves and Cliffs update, the game still doesn't change the y level when converting these coordinates. But that brings us into step 3. Starting from the converted block coordinate, the game searches the entire height map of the new dimension for a portal block coordinate. The XZ total width of the search volume in the Nether is 33 by 33 blocks, and the overworld equivalent of that is 257 by 257. These ranges are really close to being equivalent, but are slightly different due to one center block occupying different amounts of space in each dimension, but for all intents and purposes, just thinking of them as exactly the same is still the best way to do that. So the game searches through this entire area and then chooses the closest portal block to the converted block coordinates as the destination for the traveling entity. So moving on to step number 4, once the destination portal is chosen, the game now needs to know where to place the entity inside the portal. For that, it needs to get its new position and orientation. So let's start with the position in the frame. Essentially what the game does is it takes the relative position of the entity to the frame and then translates this into a frame of any other size. If an entity was on the bottom of the frame in the vertical dimension and say 24% of the way from one wall to the other horizontally, then the entity will be on the bottom of the new frame and exactly 24% of the way from one wall to the other when it arrives in the new portal, even if it's bigger or smaller. It does this in such a way that makes sure the entity doesn't clip into a wall, And also, ever since 1.19.3 at least, the game checks around the portal area to make sure that the entity doesn't instantly suffocate if it comes through the portal. But if the entity's hitbox is larger than the frame itself in a particular dimension, such as when a ghast comes through a small portal on the other side, then for that particular direction, either horizontal or vertical, the destination in the new portal is made sure to be completely centered. So you may be wondering, how does the game know what side of the portal to take this measurement from? After all, the new portal could be at a right angle to the first one. This is leaning into the question of orientation more. For the orientation of the entity inside the new portal, the game seeks to preserve the previous orientation of the entity if possible. This means that if two portals are oriented the same with respect to the cardinal directions, an entity traveling west will emerge facing west, and so on and so forth for each direction, which makes perfect sense. But the portals could also be oriented differently with respect to the cardinal directions at a right angle to each other. In cases like these, the new entity direction, which also applies to the new velocity direction as well, is rotated by 90 degrees clockwise, or like you somehow just made a right turn when traveling through the portal. If you've ever appeared in a portal facing what seems to be backwards from how it should be, this is almost certainly what has happened, but you might also just be really bad at directions. So congratulations, it was a lot of fine details, but now you know exactly how the game teleports between any two existing portals. There's just one more process to go through, which is what happens if there is no target portal in the search range of the other dimension. Well, as you know, the game attempts to generate a portal in this space. This happens in the closest suitable place in the same search range as before, and it's notable that in Java Edition, any entity except the Ender Dragon and a Wither can trigger portal creation now ever since 1.21.2. This means that items, mobs, projectiles, and more can all start the process and generate their own portal if they were the first thing to go through that portal. The criteria for a valid generation place is pretty simple. It just needs to be a 3x4 flat area of buildable blocks, and each of those needs to have 4 blocks of air above them. This is because the portal will go in the center of this area, and it wants to make sure that there's enough room for the player to get out and do at least a few things without being trapped somewhere. However, if in the entire searched area there are no spaces like this, which occasionally can happen, then the game attempts to force a portal at the converted block coordinates. But when it does this, it forces the Y level to be between Y70 and 10 less than the world height. In the Nether, this is between Y70 and Y118, and in the overworld, this is between Y70 and Y10. The reason for this being is that you don't want a portal to force you underneath a lava ocean or even a regular ocean, especially if you're in hardcore, because that can be a really crappy way to end that type of world. The force portal has a little bit of extra obsidian on it because the game has literally no idea where it's going to place you. It looks like this and comes with blocks of air 3 high in order to give you space underground, but this still kind of sucks if you're in lava because it will immediately flow into these areas, leaving you with no airspace and nothing to do except die without fire resistance. So even if you can't be in a lava ocean, you better hope that the game doesn't spawn you in a place where there's going to be lava. So congratulations, you should now know exactly how nether portals work. If all that seemed complicated, just remember that the most important thing is the game chooses the destination portal that is closest to your converted coordinates. So now I'm going to run through some common problems that people have with nether portals, and if you sneaky viewers are skipping right here in the video, I would strongly advise you to go back and watch the previous section about coordinates and the algorithm first, because that knowledge is foundational for you to actually understand what we're about to go through. So by far the most common issue people have is that portals don't link both ways for people. So why does this happen? The main reason is that criteria for the space a portal can generate in for the first time that we talked about. This can oftentimes be a decent ways away from the converted block coordinate because of the specific flat area the game looks for. The distance between the cross-dimensional block coordinate and the generated portal leaves space for a manual portal to be built that is closer, and the game would then divert traffic to the closest portal from the start of the search. So if you want to have a portal linked well, you should theoretically do this at the exact converted block coordinate. An oversimplified way to do this is the way most YouTube tutorials do it, and that's to take the block coordinate you stand on in the center of the portal, then divide x and z by 8 to get the nether block. If you're in the nether, you multiply x and z by 8 to get the overworld coordinate, and in both cases, you keep the y coordinate exactly the same. If you build a new portal at this converted coordinate, this will give you a portal that is pretty close to directly linked. But if you've been paying attention and remember myth number 3 at the beginning of this video, you may know that the reality of portal linking is not not so simple. Particularly if you are in the Nether and are trying to travel to the overworld, there is a technically better way to do this, but it's still kind of a hassle and still doesn't give you exact results unless you do it in a really weird way. What you should do if you want to ensure precision from where a particular entity is standing as they're going through a portal is to multiply your coordinates by 8, but just include the first decimal place whenever you do that. This ensures that you capture the specific block coordinate that you're actually going to in the calculations. Then once you have the new decimal, convert it to a block coordinate the same way the game does and not by a traditional rounding. Remember, the game rounds to the lower northwest corner in a floor operation, so always round down to the nearest whole number and never up. Then you have the exact block coordinate that the purple nether portal needs to be at in the other dimension. Oh, and for quality of life, you'll probably want to orient the new portal to face the same cardinal direction as the starter portal. But even if we make sure to use the exact block coordinate, this type of linking still isn't exactly perfect because the size of the frames themselves is different by a factor of 8. So this is what an overworld portal would look like that is as closely linked as we could possibly get. These two 8x8 spaces here represent the 2 blocks the nether portal physically occupies on the nether side, meaning that the sizes actually match up here, and the Y levels are all the same scale as a normal portal. An important thing to keep in mind is that this is really stupid and no one wants to do this. But with the magic of video editing, it does show how the precise nether positions translate to each overworld block. So here's another problem you might run into. If you have a portal in the nether that is greater than 16 blocks wide and you stand on one corner to travel through, the width of the portal itself can actually get wider than the equivalent overworld search area it can scan, as represented by this demonstration here on either side of the portal. That is the maximum width it can be. You'll notice that the equivalent volume of their overworld search areas don't extend to the far corners. So if you don't generate the destination portal in the overlapped area in the middle, then the two edges will not link to the same portal on the other side no matter what you do. So if you have to build a big portal in the nether, make sure that you always link the overworld side from the exact center to avoid this, because both corners can link to a portal made there. But keep in mind for large portals like this that it's really easy to mistakenly place another portal in the overworld that would accidentally divert traffic in part of this big portal. So with all this knowledge under our belt, I want to talk about more fun stuff, which is how nether portals can be used to your advantage in farms and for travel. So farm designers use all the mechanics we just learned to their advantage all the time. Probably the most common example of portal abuse for farms is taking advantage of the vertical aspect of the portal search range. Because mob farms are generally more efficient the lower they are built in the height map, and many times players AFK high above because of the despawn sphere, this means that to use looting on all these mobs, we need a quick way of getting them from down below to up where the player in the kill chamber is a lot of times. And nether portals are used like a vertical elevator in this fashion all the time. So let's look at Inn's gold farm as a simple example. The pigmen spawn on a platform below the nether roof, then go through a portal. The portal search then checks the entire overworld height map in the search volume around the converted block coordinates. The nearest portal to these converted coordinates is this one, so the pigmen are transported here even though there is a major Y difference from the converted point because it is still in the search range. The other portal is slightly higher and to the side, so it is not as close and doesn't get chosen. Pigmen get pushed around for 15 seconds, which is the minimum time before they can re-enter a portal, and then they go through the next nether portal here. The converted block coordinates of the portal in the nether are now up here, and the nearest portal in this dimension is the kill chamber, not the one below. The farm is taking advantage of the one-way aspect of portal searching in a really ingenious way to become an elevator for mobs. For a little more complicated example, let's consider my FML gold farm. This farm utilizes both the vertical and the horizontal dimension for linking, and so many people have struggled so hard with the portal linking that this video is going to serve to help you all understand. This farm has 4 separate portals at the nether roof and another kill chamber portal up top that the piglins get transported into after the overworld elevator. This top portal is as far to the edge as possible because we want the top height map of the spawning area to be as low as possible to get the most spawns for the farm. So to help us understand, I've overlaid the search range of the easternmost portal at the bottom and also the search range if you were to go through this westernmost portal at the top, and you can see that both of these overlap in only a tiny little sliver here in the middle, and this tiny little area is where we have to bridge the gap between these two portals horizontally. So if we build a portal in this magical space in the middle of the overworld side, it serves as a bridge from the far east to the far west, kind of like how Gangnam Style did it back in 2012. So if we hop into the overworld side, we can see a little visual demonstration of what's going on. These 4 sections of black and white rectangles represent the actual portal frame blocks themselves that are converted into this larger dimension. Up here is the overworld elevator, and up here at the very top represents the 2 portals that the storage portal connects to. And this orange orange line right here behind these two portals represents the centers of the hitboxes of the pigmen that are on the far eastern side. That is the farthest away from the bridge that we can get. So we can see the search ranges of the pigment that are coming through this orange space in here in blue. And so this is the area of the overworld that the game is checking for a receiving portal whenever the pigment come through in these converted block coordinates right here. So if we take a look at where the overworld elevator is, it's on the very edge of the horizontal distance that this farm can be, and it's also traveling upwards in the world in order to connect it more vertically to the higher Y coordinates that we're going to over there. And so then after they arrive in this elevator, they'll go up the ladder and drop into this higher search portal. And this portal search range I will also highlight here. And so this portal search range is now highlighted here in green, and it's centered on this nether portal block right around here. And you can see that the green search area that is being searched in the nether now overlaps where the storage portal is. So another horizontal transfer as well as a little bit of vertical transfer is happening here. And in case you wanted a bird's eye view of kind of visually what this looks like, here it is. Keep in mind that the green is just a representation of what's happening in the nether whenever they go back through this portal, and the blue is what happens whenever they travel from the nether to the overworld, where the overworld is searched here. And in case you wanted some more eye candy, here's the carpet script that shows where the closest portal link is in the other dimension. So as you can see, whenever the pigmen travel through this portal and arrive here, the purple line represents the closest nether portal link, and the blue lines represent all other portal links that could be possible but aren't close enough to actually send them there. So even if the pigmen go back through this portal, they'll still arrive in the storage portal instead of down there at those. And you can even do some absolutely insane portal linking horizontally this way. If you have a nether perimeter, for example, there's a lot of space that needs to be transferred in the overworld, so you can have some very complicated bridging both vertically and horizontally. But for the purposes of this video, I won't dive too deep into those here, since I feel pretty confident that I've given you the tools to explore both vertical and horizontal bridging on your own if you like. But lastly, I want to go quickly into something that is really interesting, which is world border gold farms. Garlic Bread has a great video on these that I will link in the description. The theory is that even though the nether and the overworld both have a world border at just under 30 million blocks away from their origins, because the nether is compressed by a factor of 8 for portal linking, it means that there is all the space in the nether that has no overworld to link to, because the space it should go to is way beyond our world border. And if you build a giant gold farm at the nether space outside of the overworld world border, they can all link to a single location at the edge of the overworld itself and ignore traditional search ranges. So long story short, combine this with the know-how of the TMC players much smarter than me, and this can give you 5 million gold nuggets per hour. So to show you just the scale of what is possible with this type of linking, let's see what this farm looks like when it's running, and then what happens if we break it. So I hope you've had fun and found this interesting. Even though the basics are quite simple, nether portal mechanics can still challenge technical players, just like I learned a lot researching and making this video. As always, the good folks at the TMCC Discord have been a huge help, so a huge shout out to Human and Tomh for some pointers and the knowledge they shared, and for accidentally miscrediting you in the last video, Human, sorry about that. And as always, dear viewer, if you are still here, thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to bringing you more farms and also pure informative videos like this, so subscribe if you would like to see more high quality content like this in the future. And with that, I'll catch you in the next video.